Our last budget, this should be you did a good job organizing this. I should wait to say that after.
Yes, Your Honor. Commissioner Decker?
Here.
Densberger?
Here.
Jeffers?
Here.
Call?
Here.
Mayor Mingus? All present, Your Honor.
Much. Of course, we are here tonight in this working session. No formal action to be taken, and it's the continuance of our budget discussion. And I'll turn over to Commissioner Densberger.
Okay. Our main point this evening is to, we talked about the capital budget a good bit last week, and so I took the comments and, for the sake of conversation, put together a suggested capital budget, which all of you gentlemen should have a copy of. And of course, there's room for conversation in it, I suppose, in shifting some priorities. But what I came up with, I took a step back from it after our conversation. And streets, I got the impression that streets had to be our focal point. So I worked it from streets and went back the other way. Rather than having streets get what was left. So what I came up with was the fueling station parking lot, an HVAC upgrade for $70,000, 7 squad cars for $315, an F-250 crew cab diesel for $40, a generator set at 4 House for $25, 1 plow truck at $180, which leaves $470 out of that portion of the budget for a total of $1.1 million. However, when you put that $470 together with MFT, the general fund capital, and other street paving funds, we could then get a street maintenance budget of $1.24 million. So that would be my proposal as a starting point, gentlemen. And comments, thoughts?
I know sitting down with Jeff Becker at the end of last week, this is within one item of the same thing I would have proposed, so I'm in full support as you've presented it.
And that 1.24, I know we had extensive conversation last week about the roundabout engineering and the possibility of pushing it back a year with PUATs and how to proceed. So, Commissioner, I know you needed a little time to look into that. If you have a suggestion or thoughts on that.
On that specifically, I'll come back to that. I have a couple quick questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just trying to organize my thoughts. Last year when we, our fund balance is, I believe, I know, I think Jeff put out something this week. I think he gave it to Commissioner Jeffers, but around 1.7 or 1.8 would be the proposed fund balance at the end of this year. I guess available funds on if a catastrophe were to occur and we needed to pull funds. Is that correct?
That would be the general fund cash reserve.
Okay. And it was prior to the vote on sales tax. If my memory serves me correctly, was it around 400,000?
Would have been higher than that. Since the vote on sales tax, we've only deposited $500,000 in there, so it should have been about 1.2 at that time.
And that's where my confusion lies. Maybe it's not a great way to look at it, but I didn't go back to the night. I just talked to some people that I know were paying attention at that point, and we all kind of thought about the same numbers, that it was somewhere around $500,000 or so, but I could be wrong about that. So at that time, we were at how much? You said like 900,000?
It should have been about 1.2.
1.2. Okay. I have a couple thoughts. First of all, I like that we're not killing the roundabout. I have a lot of documentation here with me that goes back to the original discussion regarding the roundabout. It was actually deemed to be a very dangerous intersection when it was first brought forward. It was recognized that it was a problem in central Illinois, and for us, it's our problem because it's in our city. It's our responders that have to go to it. It's the people that travel to our city and live in our city that are getting in those accidents. Oftentimes they aren't severe accidents, but sometimes they are. When it was brought forward as it being a dangerous intersection, this then became a topic for PUATs. And I believe it was first talked about 2010, I think, Rick, if I'm not mistaken. There was one point, I don't know if y'all will remember it, the city approached IDOT about creating a turn lane into Embassy Suites into that road. And we were told, sure, you can do that, but you've got to widen the bridge to do that. And it was just kind of the thought that we could create a safer atmosphere if we could. Obviously, that's not something the city's going to do, and that's how the roundabout came to fruition. It's not something that is to make anything pretty or anything like that. It was out of a necessity to try to find a solution to a dangerous intersection. And the dangerous intersection was mainly at the bottom of Bob Michael Bridge. So when it was planned back then, hindsight, yes, and I think in the future, whenever we approve PUAT's funding, we need to start immediately putting aside the appropriate funding for the future, divided in however many years it's going to go out and say this is how much we have to spend. If the council is going to commit to it, we just have to move forward. So that's not criticism of anyone. I mean, I was here as well. So that's how it came about. I appreciate that we're not killing that because it is important to the city to take care of our dangerous areas. And this was a dangerous area. So for us to just say we're not going to do anything about it, I think would have been a bad idea. Plus, PUATs, over the history of PUATs, I think since 1975, has provided the city with an enormous amount of money. It would take me a while to flip through here. But the total project costs that the city has been involved with PUATs is somewhere close to, I think, $20 million. And the city only pays a portion of that. So you can see how big of a benefit PUATs has been over the years. And that was the point that I was trying to make last week, that it's important to stick with the commitments we've made and move forward, because we have some very important roads out there that we hope PUATs will help us with. The people that live out by Grange Road, that's very important to them. And it's an amount of money that the city of East Peoria just can't afford. Centennial Drive Hill, that's a project that we believe PUATs will be in the future supportive of. And that, again, it's something that if we had to pay for that, that would take away from city street funding. So it's important in the grand scheme of things to really look at what will in the long run bring us the most money back to the city of East Peoria. So I do appreciate that we're not killing it. It is not necessary to pile the money in this year. So I think that this is a good approach to it. I would like to offer one solution, though, and I think you all may agree with it. There's one thing that's on the horizon, and that is a potential change to our, I want you just to turn me off. I'm not suggesting pulling any money back right now, but there is a potential change to our pension contributions in the future. And that change could be an enormous amount of money that the city of East Peoria could get to keep for projects like this. Instead of paying it for pensions, we could use it in areas we need. The city of East Peoria has always done what it's supposed to do when it comes to pensions. We've done exactly what the actuary tells us. So, and that's what everybody has always asked of us. So that's something we can be proud of. We are well funded. If you look at pensions throughout the state of Illinois, East Peoria has done a good job. As you look at those funded liabilities, there is a proposal out there to decrease those this year. So I would like to, for us all to keep an open mind this year as the legislature looks at that as a possibility of pulling that back if that happens. And I say that because I talk with people, I think it may happen soon. If so, I would like for the council to consider opening this in the next, when it does happen potentially, and picking up some of these items that are left off. I just saw this today. So as far as the budget in general, it does still give me some heart heartache because, or heartburn, because the plow truck is something that's very important to me. I'm happy that we're getting one, don't get me wrong. We're down 4, and that's not anyone's fault. It's just at some point we need to catch up. So if we do have more funding throughout the rest of the year, that is one area that I'd like to purchase at least one more plow truck this year. I would always like to add more money to the streets. As I said last week, I have for 12 years argued, and until I've lost my voice, argued for our roads. And if we were able to, let's say, find another $1 million this year, I would love to put a huge portion of that directly into our streets. And here's why. I'm a little concerned with the total that we have here. I drove on Hy-Vee Road over the last couple days, a couple times, and it's in terrible shape. We can Band-Aid it again, but as I've said year after year after year, we need to fix Hy-Vee Road, and that's only one of many. I can pull up probably 20 council meetings where I've had forums or talked about the need to put more money into our streets. And Highview is one that services a lot of people, not just the people that live there, but the people that are going to ICC for school, and it's very important. So I appreciate what's here. I would like to think about it instead of just giving my commitment. But the plow truck is something that does give me some concern, but I'd like you all to keep an open mind. And I know it's going to be a different council at that time, but if we are able to re-examine how much we have to pay toward pensions this year, I would like to utilize that, 1, in our equipment, and 2, into our streets.
Thank you, Commissioner. Densberg, I heard him very clearly say that we'll look at the budget and our finances later on in the year, and perhaps money may be available, but we're conservative in that.
You know, if the legislature does change the pension formula and the need for the obligation, that would, as you say, could free up some additional cash. It would not be in the, I would have a hard time believing it would be in the $1 million range. Jeff, have you seen any projections as to what their suggestions are?
No, but I think, so they're looking at reducing it 10% to 80 instead of 90 and pushing it back 10 years. So there's going to be savings on both sides, so I think it could be significant.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. It'd be big for us.
However, you know, that gives some relief to communities. However, it doesn't really solve the overall problem, but it does help with our cash flow and those of municipalities across the state. I know Peoria is struggling mightily with it. So, but you're correct. That would be something to keep in mind, and certainly a decision for the next council. So,
Commissioner Jeffers, comments?
The proposed capital request for this next fiscal year, I appreciate it, and I think it's a good one. For this or any future council to look at future revenue that comes in, we've done this before where we actually have done that, where we were able to throw some additional dollars late in the season for street improvements, especially as we, some of those projects lend themselves to more of a short term. There's not a lot of engineering, you just go in there and fix it. I know Commissioner Decker, you'll be hosting or presenting us a street rating session here sometime in the next few weeks, I guess, perhaps, or when able with Patrick Meyer. That way we have a picture where we're at. I know we say the roads are bad, and I agree with you. We can say they're bad, but
to be fair, I know I've talked with you about it, Commissioner. I'm sure these two are cringing because I haven't yet announced to them that I'd like to do it in the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, they're pretty flexible. They have it on their sheet, but no, we have get the doctor's report to see where we're at, and then at that point you really see where the problems are. And look, we can look out and say, yes, this is bad, and it may be, and I'm not disputing that, but at the same time, we get back to your measuring stick of what percentage are at 70% or then 7 rating, 70% at 7 rating, or so forth, and I think we can see where we've come and where we want to be, and so that drives the decision as to how you attack that. And I know you're prepared for that, and Patrick and staff, they already know probably what's out there based, we've been doing this for years and years like this now, a pretty consistent measuring stick, so we know what we have. But no, I appreciate this. I think there's room for, what I like is the fact that we know at a glimpse here, and there's much more detail, we know at a glimpse where we need to be in 3 years or what's out there coming, all right? We know that the fire department's trucks and so forth are out there and et cetera. The ongoing police requests and so forth. So, for instance, the Veterans Bridge replacement, we know it's out there. Besides the roundabout, one that may slip under the radar, but it's very clear, is the Riverside Camp Street intersection. That's another one that is out there awaiting to be done someday. And so we've put engineering or have projected engineering. So there is a longer term view here, and I like that a lot. And that gives us a good picture so we can get our hands around it. And so if, one thing we need to do always is maintain or complete our engineering, our homework before you have to plan your work and work your plan. So if you can get your engineering down, whether it's a building blueprints or drawings for your streets and so forth, get those down. That way if there is a capital bill that comes through, and I'm hopeful that the state may be able to figure that out, even though we have a big debt problem in the state, that we are as ready as anybody and can justify what we want to have done. So I commend this, Commissioner Densberger. I think this is a good, call it a compromise. It's on necessity how we have it, and I think it can work. It gives us a good blueprint, and I know with depending on the streets, with the different ways that they choose to fix and make their dollars go, overlay versus the heat scarification. The heat scarification has been a great process. It's saved us, it's less than half of new overlay, isn't it, Rick? A little more than half of overlay, but we're finding the quality is very close to new overlay. So that's been a good thing as far as necessities caused new processes to give us more for our dollar. So that's encouraging because road construction costs have gone up much faster than rate of inflation. So that's good news that gain's been there. So I like it. I'm like Commissioner Decker. I wish we had more for several areas here, but this is what we have, and I think this can work. And I think with this much money, we'd have a chance to see some actual changes and some improvements. Sometimes we have a large city in terms of streets, and so things with the cost, you throw $1 million, it's hard sometimes to see where it all goes unless you put it in just one spot. But I'm hopeful that once the streets are evaluated and selections are made, apart from any of us sitting up here, that they'll make a good recommendation. We'll see some good results.
We do have the evaluations done. It's just a matter of presenting them.
That's fine. And I know it's the basis of your request too, so thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I just might say that I fully support your recommendations and commend you and Jeff Becker for your hard work. Staff, I know that you didn't get everything you want or what you think we need, but I think you put a good effort, compromise, and I think we heard you. And I mean heard, not just lip service there, where there are priorities that the council is going to pursue in the future and look at assuring funds were there. Appreciate each of you gentlemen for what you did and your willingness to look and compromise. I commend each of you, and thank you very much for making my last budget. At least we're going to get one.
And Your Honor, I'll just,
Mr. Mayor, I would ask this question. Is this better than last year?
I think so.
The answer is yes, isn't it? I mean, if you just want to compare.
Much better. I think the optimism that we can have is much better this year than we had last year. I'll say that.
and Your Honor, I'll just say that Mr. Becker did the lion's share of the work here, interfacing with all the department heads,
Jeff.
putting it all together and working the numbers. And thank you very much for your effort, and it's a fine job to get this done, get it done actually early.
Just a couple of points
Please,
I'd like to bring up.
Commissioner.
I'm not sure why the reserve amount's been brought up the last two meetings, but I know 3 years ago was when we had like 444,000. It was about 3 years ago this time. So I do know that Mr. Becker has alluded to the fact that it's like 1.7 million. And this council made a concerted effort to some of that sales tax increase, put it back into reserves, which had been depleted through the year, so just want to clarify that.
And we do need to continue expanding the reserve fund. I believe our target is 4 million.
Sure. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, because I've mentioned it multiple times, and just to correct the record, I mentioned the police wages and the public works wages. So Jeff went to work. He had mentioned the payouts were not included in the number I had on the police side. So he shared those with me and closed that gap to pretty much nil. So that compensated that. And then public works, you guys have a bunch of people that shift responsibilities, and then there's steps, I guess, in the middle of the year. So that closed that gap. And then he included the stipends today, but there's still a difference of 44,000 and some change there. So I guess I'm posing the question and asking if you guys could look into that and just, I think those funds could be utilized somewhere else if that's the case.
Now, I might be confused. When you asked me that, or asked that a couple weeks ago, I believed it to be the case. I spoke with Dennis about it, and unless we're not understanding the question, I think the answer is that during the year and then the following year where it looked like the wage amounts increased, there was quite a bit of time that year where jobs weren't filled because of we had the year where so many people retired, and we actually had a couple month stretch where we were down 4 or 5 people. Now, I don't know exactly if that's what you're saying. I've been a little bit confused about that, but I think that's what you're talking about. I've just been struggling to figure out. We'll look into it.
Well, Jeff
Exactly.
did a lot of work, and I think he may have shared it with Dennis just today. So I'm not trying to surprise anybody, but I'd encourage Jeff to share this with both you commissioners, if you could take a look at it. And it lists the employees by name, and that's how I got the number, the final number. But I wanted to make it clear because I think I threw out $200,000 difference. That's not the case. It's like 44,000.
Appreciate
But if you
the
guys
effort.
could look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience want to speak to the council regarding issue tonight? Please come forward. Seeing no one come forward, is there a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Commissioner Call, second, please.
Second.
Mr. Densberger, roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.